Could you tell us more about, I guess, his personality as a person?
His personality survives through his poetry, right? We don't know much about him except that he speaks as a poet. Right? And that's, of course, one of the paradoxes of poetry, that it's not artificial, but somehow you play a certain role, and that's also the person you want to be, and you become that role. So he is very clearly, sometimes he's much more easygoing than this poem, I think. This is a very intense poem in certain ways. But he's trying to create that equanimity, that calm.
Does his style change over his lifetime?
Well, it's very hard. I want to try to answer that question. It's some thoughtfulness here. People say it does, but just on the same time, when they say it does, they often are dating the poems, because that's how he should be writing when he's a young man, and that's how he should be writing at middle age, and that's how he should be writing at old age. So he talks about his development, the transformation. There's a poem that begins, "In my middle years, I loved only the way. Now late in life, I make my home by South Mountains." Well, depending on how you read that, it means I learned to love the way when I was middle-aged, but I didn't do anything about it, right? I just kept up because I had business to do and take care of. But now late in life, I finally get to realize that. Poet's personality is more often than not realized through the poem.
But is that the personality that they want to picture themselves as, or is it the real personality that's coming through? I guess there's no way to...
Yeah, you can't see that. People are not born with personalities. Maybe dispositions to personalities, but they develop personalities by playing roles in society, right? And the poet is one way to gradually build a role which you feel comfortable with. And it can go, for example, I think when Du Fu was his last years, he did have contact with people, but he really wasn't writing to other people. So without the social world around you to stabilize your role, he got very strange. And his poetry got very strange because he stopped hearing his poems as other people would hear them. So in some ways, the way you write poetry and send it out to your friends, community, so it fits you into the world. And of course, his life was saved because of a poem, Wang Wei's. I didn't tell the story. Anushan, you may have heard the Anushan Rebellion. And when he took Chang'an unexpectedly to most people, the emperor fled by night and the rebel army was in the capital the next day and people couldn't escape. They rounded up all the officials. And they made them go to Luoyang, which was Anushan's capital, and serve in the government of Anushan. And many of them were reluctant, but they were forced to do it. Then the Tang was restored, and all the people at Luoyang was retaken, and all those officials who had been carried off to Luoyang were now back in Tang hands. Some were executed, some were exiled, and there was Wang Wei, and it was a poem he'd written. His brother, of course, was chief minister at the time, as said, my brother wrote it. We don't know if it really did write the poem, but probably he did, which expressed sadness at being, trapped there, and his sense of loyalty to the Tang. And because of that poem, and no doubt because he was the brother of the chief minister and Taiyuan Wang, he was forgiven. So literally, the poem saved his life.
The way you tell stories about Du Fu and Wang and many things, we can almost do psychoanalysis through their poems to understand who they are.
I wouldn't want to do psychoanalysis, but I do think that you can say that, that you can see a lot of the ways in which poetry and society work together, right? And the world in which you circulate poems is a social act, too. Even poems that look very private are a part of circulating the social world. People read them, and they always want to know you by the poem, right? You talked the question you were asking. So that it's sort of self-fashioning, I think is the word they often use. But you can't psychoanalyze self-fashioning. You can,
Maybe that's not the right word, but understanding their psychological states.
Yeah, or understanding the person that they see themselves as, and also sometimes the things they reveal while not wanting to reveal. And if you read, the Analects, there's a nice thing about look to how it is. That's what they do. How things look to what it comes from. That is what the motives are in doing something.
Yeah.
And the last one is Chachisoan. Look to that situation in which the person would be comfortable, I guess, at peace. And that's a peculiar, not quite a psychological way, but it's a way of thinking of person's acts and statements and language in terms of not just motives, because motives can hide other things, right? But knowing the person, how they would, what they really want.
What I like about the poems that we've read by Wang Wei is that it does feel very private, and you don't have other subjects in it, or you don't feel like it's being given to anyone. But I feel like nature is a way to bring Wang Wei the identity to surface. Whenever it's compared with, or a sound, or a smell, or against nature, it brings the Wang Wei to the subject, to the reader.
Being a recluse, or leaving the world, is also a social act. It is defined by society. So it's not that Wang Wei tried to hide his poems, but his image to the world, and also probably his real feelings. I'm not saying this is not, but he is the person who touches nature, has a peace in nature, or at least finds enough peace where he can control the dragon.
Do we know anything about the composition or the circulation of this particular poem? Because it seems like a very private poem, right? And yet, here it is, we have it.
I'm trying to think if this is in any of the Tang anthologies, and I might be. I haven't checked it out. But his collection circulated and seemed to be very popular. And in many ways, he was even more than Li Bai and Du Fu for a long time, the major poet.
And he had say in terms of that?
No. No, I think it's usually, but they would collect the poet's work after they died.
Gotcha.
Later on, people start collecting their own works to control their output, what they show the world. But this was after he passed away that his brother, both gathered the collection and presented to the throne.
Why Li Bai and Du Fu became so famous? Was it something political?
No. They had a talent that waited. I mean, they had an unmistakable talent, but they're very different kinds of talent than Wang Wei. So if you look at the Tang anthologies, either Wang Wei or one of Wang Wei's disciples tends to head several of them. But the last version of a certain kind of anthology appears in the year 900, right at the end of the Tang, and there the poet Wei Zhuang puts Du Fu first, Li Bai second, and Wang Wei third. Li Bai and Du Fu have been fully accepted as major figures, and Wang Wei, who'd always been the first, has been moved down to number 3.
Why did you choose this particular poem?
I chose this particular poem because it's, one, I wanted to have one with a text and glosses, and 2, I think it's a very good example of a poem that is boring in English without going through it and looking at it carefully. So I wanted to, this is sort of my example of teaching regulated verse. And a lot of the energy, you say, what's the poison? I noticed one of the questions, what is the poison dragon doing there? But of course, if you read the poem, you know why the poison dragon is there.